America's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best. Looking for a new home or that special place to spend your retirement? Century 21 Realty Management has the place for you. Ladera Towers Condominium in Manila. Luxury living you deserve. Amenities like a gourmet kitchen, a large jacuzzi tub, private lanai with a magnificent ocean view, and 24/7 security. Other amenities, large swimming pool, couple of tennis courts, 3-bedroom condo units are available right now. This is an opportunity you should look at now before they're all gone. Call us now at Century 21 Realty Management, 647-5003, or visit the website, laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Looking for a new car? How about a used car? Nissan has given you 32 plus reasons to see them first. Each used car undergoes a thorough 32-point inspection before it can earn a spot on the Nissan lot. Inventory of all makes and models and vehicles for every lifestyle and every budget. Call 671-647-7261 or visit nissanguam.com for more details.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, it's Tailgaters Friday out there in our international radio listening audience out there in Tailgater Nation. So, of course, I'm wearing my Tailgater T-shirt. It is Tailgater Friday, so let's everybody suit up today and tomorrow. Wear those Tailgater T-shirts. And spread the good word about what a great show Tall Tales is and what great people tailgaters are. So this is our least favorite day of the week, even though it's Tailgater Friday, because no Tall Tales tomorrow, no Tall Tales on Sunday. And it's really tough on Jose and I. If we could, we would do Tall Tales every day of the week. Maybe 2 on Sundays, right, Jose?
Well, I usually wrap myself up in a I'm a Tailgater T-shirt, and I'm good for the weekend.
Yeah, that's all it takes, huh? Well, everybody has to learn how to cope with the absence of Tall Tales. Okay, so let's start right now with Zemi Ikotny, such as it is. Yeah, I got to go to the online version here. You don't have the hard copy, do you, Jose? Yeah, let me just take a minute to go to the online version. I didn't print out a copy of it today. It's kind of a waste of paper and ink.
Well, you know, the PDN didn't print a copy of it either.
Yeah, so we got something in common, right? And, you know, I checked out the law on a newspaper of general circulation because certain kinds of notices have to be published in a newspaper. And a newspaper of general circulation doesn't have to be published every day, once a week. But the statute uses the word printed 1 day a week. So some enterprising barrister, you know, may challenge something that occurred in court based on failure to follow the notice requirements.
And those are printed in every periodical, including papers and magazines. You'll see them usually by the publisher's list.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me grab this editorial here. little slow. Well, maybe there was no editorial today. Maybe that's why
I can't find one either.
Maybe that's why I didn't bring it. Yeah, I guess we'll just talk it up with the Daily News, understanding that perhaps no editorial at all in some respects is better than a bad editorial. Because I don't find any editorial at all in the online edition. So what I usually do is I go to the online edition and print the things I need for the show. And if I didn't print it, it's probably because it wasn't there. Okay, so I'm still fighting with Facebook. Are we on is Facebook up, Jose?
Yeah, it should be up. Let me see here.
Yeah, I got it on my iPad, so I guess it's there. So no editorial, so I go straight to the card for today. And I start out, of course, with Public Law 80, as you were 3634. And then I go to Paul Zerzan versus Systemic Racism. Or, actually, reverse order. Then I'm going to finish up Tom Pool versus Cockfighting. Then I've got the Governor versus Hassil. I've got the, as you were Governor versus Chris, Legislature versus Cassil, and and I've got another good article here. I'm going to have to do this one online too. The Attorney General has issued an opinion concerning the meeting of the Visitors Bureau that's scheduled for Monday. And I'll pick that up probably right after Governor versus Chris. Okay, so we start out here with systemic racism, which I won't spend any time on today. I think we all pretty much understand what's going on there. And then with respect to notices, nothing particularly interesting in today's paper, but I do go back to yesterday's paper, looking at the agenda for the Election Commission, and find that under the Executive Director's report, under the heading of Election Campaign Finance, I see Guam Federation of Teachers Committee on Political Education. Now that sounds pretty interesting to me. I'll wait for the eagle-eyed reporters from our media to report on it. And then going to the Daily News for the meeting of the Land Trust Commission, under old business, the first item is additional parking requests from Guam Memorial Hospital. And I'd have to say, if you've been following the news, probably the thing that the hospital needs more than anything else is more parking, right? Yeah, they don't need doctors, nurses, a leak-proof roof, whatever. They just need more parking.
Why don't they just build a garage?
Yeah. Well, I'm just having such a rough time with Facebook almost every day, Jose. I know that's not much you can deal with, but anyhow, go ahead and keep posting out there, tailgaters, and sooner or later I'll be able to see what you post. I hope.
Yeah, it's just a little slow on my side, but I think we're on. I don't even have it on my laptop here. That's our Finding Facebook music.
Yeah, I finally got it, Jose. All right, so here we are. And some of our faithful tailgaters have already logged in, are posting comments. Okay, next item on the 836-34 part of the agenda. I mentioned that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission is considering more parking for the hospital. And then they've also got the Guam International Country Club and the Guam Racing Federation on their agendas. And then finally, new business, appointment of Alice Tyrone as administrative director. So I know Henry was listening yesterday when I was talking about that. So there's a lot of legal challenges out there, Henry, if that's the way you want to proceed. And then there's something that didn't appear in the paper, but as I was following up on what's going on with the Visitors Bureau, I did read the report by the McDonald Law Office to the BRIC, Business Risk something or other committee, right? And there's an interesting footnote here. There's a sentence that reads, additionally, from time to time, such customary board practices lead it to take official action outside of relevant applicable administrative procedures. So going back to the sentence before that, though committees giving directors face-to-face access to responsible employees, as well as actual or parent authority residing under bylaws created, board-level positions and corporate officer positions, the agency's directors had grown accustomed to giving direct instructions to employees to act on any matter coming to the attention of a director, despite expressed limitations in the Enabling Act on directors' power to issue directives for employees to act. You can't do that. You can't say, I'm on the board of directors, so I want you to mow the lawn from right to left instead of from left to right. The only way that the board can give such directions is through properly noticed and adopted resolutions. Then McDonald goes on to say, additionally, from time to time, such customary board practices would lead it to take official action outside of official, relevant, applicable administrative procedures. And then there's a footnote. And here's the footnote. For instance, it's two recent vacant member selections at the December 9, 2021 and February 24, 2022 board meetings are void because the agency failed to provide an agenda giving reasonable notice of what business will be conducted at the meeting. See Open Government Law, Section 8114.1, which reads, any action of a public agency taken at a meeting is void and of no effect if the public agency failed to comply with the public notice of agenda matters to be discussed pursuant to Section 8107D of this chapter, or fail to comply with the broadcast requirements, etc. So how many times have I been broadcasting this caveat since June of last year, Jose? When you do it, if you don't do your agenda right, everything you do is void. And certainly the Visitors Bureau has been in that category. And then it's not bad enough that those two meetings are void, but he goes on to say this, other unnoticed votes are likely void, as are the quorums which counted these elected directors, as well as votes cast by them. So this is just a huge trap for those who choose to be the unwary. It requires strict compliance. Since I got this far into it, I think I'm going to go next to the Attorney General's opinion and the latest on the fracas at the at the Visitors Bureau. Got it right here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Okay, I've got the opinion, and here's how it reads. Question number 1, whether there are vacancies in the ranks of the elected directors of the Board of Trustees of the Visitors Bureau due to expiration of some of the elected directors' terms. The remaining elected directors can appoint directors to fill the vacancies? Question mark. In short, no. The GVB board consists of 5 directors appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the legislature. And these are called appointed directors. There are 2 directors who are appointed by the speaker. These are called legislative directors. 4 directors who are elected by GVB's contributing members. These are called the elected directors. And on Monday, that's what the Visitors Bureau is going to try to do, 4 elected directors. In order to be an elected director, you have to be a dues-paying member of the Visitors Bureau. In order to vote, you have to be a dues-paying member of the Visitors Bureau. And then there's a 12th director who is elected by the other 11, and an alternate appointed by the speaker. Elected directors are chosen by contributing membership to serve a term of 2 years. Elections by the contributing members differ from elections by elected directors to fill seats vacated by the resignation of or removal. The latter is accomplished under the statutory process found in the Visitors Bureau statute, in which it reads as follows. A vacancy on the board, whether created by resignation or removal of an elected member, shall be filled by selection by at least 2 of the remaining elected directors. Now, an elected director filling a vacancy shall serve only until the end of the term of the director who he elected. That section only applies to seats vacated by resignation or removal, not by expired terms. If it did apply to expired terms, there would be no need to conduct director elections. Makes sense. Expired term, have the other two terms expire, have the other 2 choose 2 new members, and then at the end of their terms, have the other 2 keep doing that, and you never have to have an election. Thus, the selection of Mr. Akihiro Tani and Mr. George Chu would be invalid. Now, you recall at the last meeting, Milton Morinaga, the chair, the reluctant chair who says he's trying to resign, said, why don't we just go ahead with it? And you had some people saying, no, you can't go ahead with it. First of all, you don't have a quorum, right? And the putative selection of those directors earlier would have been void. Now, there's a typo here because it says, therefore, after February 5, 2023, when Gatewood and Bell's terms ended. I think they meant February 5, 2022, because as I was following along, it seems to me that's when it happened. If it were February 5, 2023, that would have been just a couple of days ago. But anyhow, that's what the opinion says. Next question. Are corporate resolutions binding on a corporation's board of directors unless revoked by subsequent resolution? Yes. The corporate resolution is a document recording decisions made by the board members regarding actions a company will take. A corporate resolution is binding on the directors until rescinded by another resolution. So when the board, at least if it's acting consistent with statute, wants to give directions to, say, the executive manager or anybody else in the lash-up, it has to do it with a resolution. And number 3, recognizing that the board of directors during their last meeting in May of 2022 suspended all meetings until the agency's bylaws could be revised, whether the board was the authority to schedule any future meeting without having first resolved issues with the bylaws that triggered the suspension. Can they have meetings without fixing the bylaws? In short, yes, they can. Your question raises the underlying question. Can corporations operate without bylaws? The law supports the position that if a corporation fails to adopt bylaws, the authority to perform any of the acts that normally would be controlled by bylaws will be vested in the board of directors and any of its committees. So you see here that bylaws are not enabling provisions, they're limiting provisions. Because in the absence of bylaws, the board of directors could take any action that the bylaws could contemplate. So if you look in the bylaws allow the directors to borrow money, if that would be the kind of bylaw that would pass legal muster, then if there are no bylaws, the board can borrow money. That's what that section means. So it's probably the opposite of what your common sense tells you. If it's not in the, you probably start out, well, if it's not in the bylaws, then the corporation can't do it. But actually what the Attorney General is saying here is kind of the opposite. If there are no bylaws, then there aren't those limits on the board's powers. Thus, the board can act in the absence of bylaws. The board has the authority to schedule future meetings without having first resolved the issues with the bylaws that triggered the suspension, inasmuch as the board can act in the absence of bylaws. Very interesting opinion. So as I read through the workup done by Attorney McDonald, that's on the GVB website, and as I read the Attorney General's opinion here, it looks like the Carl is probably busy taking a victory lap right now, because it appears that Milton Morinaga and some of the other board members who asserted contrary positions do not have the law to back them up.
Denied.
And then I found out something just before showtime that was pretty interesting. You know that Amanda Shelton had scheduled an oversight hearing, right? Well, actually, Jesse Lujan had scheduled the oversight hearing because Amanda is off island. And I gave Jess a pat on the back because the only people he wanted to talk to were the Carl and Curtis Jerry Paris and two other people. He didn't want to turn it into a circus, open it up to the public, turn it into everybody's opportunity to audition for a role in the next Law and Order or Perry Mason show. And so I said that was pretty good. Now, ostensibly, the reason for doing this was to get people together so they could iron things out. That's not the function of a legislative hearing. The function of a legislative hearing, theoretically, the only function is to gather the kind of facts and information they need to pass legislation. That's why they have subpoena power. That's why they can hold people in contempt. That's why they can swear people in. And that's why people can perjure themselves in front of legislators. It all sounds kind of judicial, doesn't it?
Almost.
Yeah, but that's the reason. So, and of course, have so held that. So Jesse was going to have his hearing today, notwithstanding that this meeting on Monday may very well resolve all of the conflicts. If enough people show up, the groundwork is laid to resolve all of the conflicts. But so the hearing was set to go off today. Amanda Shelton apparently returned early from her trip, waltzed into the session hall 6 minutes before the hearing was to start, and announced that she had canceled the hearing. Yeah. So, of course, you had the folks from the Visitors Bureau there and the press, and had it not been at 2, had it been at 10 in the morning, I'd probably been there myself. I saw Tom Adda do this once before. It's just not a very nice thing for senators to do.
It's horrible optics.
It is.
Because this was not a quiet hearing or a fact-finding session. People were talking about it and were waiting for this day.
Exactly, yeah. People were waiting for it.
Did she give an explanation?
I don't know. The information that I got was she canceled the hearing and then evicted everybody from the session hall. No, I don't think anybody was Ken Leon Guerrero'd. Another new verb here. To be Ken Leon Guerrero'd means you're in a meeting that's public, you won't leave, so the cops are called and you're arrested. Yeah. It kind of comes from the same fabric that lynching is made out of. Yeah, so they were shushed out of the hearing hall. Now, if there's a reason to do it, the chairman has to take the microphone, call the hearing to order, and say, I'm going to have to reschedule this hearing to such and such a date. Because if you just cancel it, and then let's say you decide after Monday didn't work out the way you wanted to have another oversight hearing, you got to go through the whole notice procedure again. And that, of course, takes at least a week. If you say, I'm going to reschedule the meeting, then you can, by posting the right kind of notices and things, you could pick it for a date certain. And if you don't need it, you can politely cancel it. But to just waltz in and say, meeting canceled, not too cool. Let's take a short break here, and we'll go back to Tom Poole and cockfighting.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yesterday, I had an article here that ran on a radio station in Oklahoma City and what the intelligentsia call Okie City. And one of the featured parts of the program was our very own Tom Poole. Tom Poole, who has posted and come on the air here at Tall Tale, former territorial veterinarian, tremendously good source of information about not only things medical, but just about things in general. And this article talks about how Oklahoma has been the capital of cockfighting in the United States. How much cockfighting is going on, how much gambling, et cetera, and other illicit activities are connected with cockfighting in Oklahoma. And it quotes Wayne Pacell, the guy from Animal Wellness Action Center and Center for Humane Economy. And then it later on gets into a quote from where's my Tom Poole quote here? Well, picking up with the article, the investigation in Oklahoma, reporting Oklahoma's biggest cockfighting operators accounted for 40% of the 11,500 birds shipped by cockfighters to the small U.S. territory of Guam in the Western Pacific. Quote, I had to watch thousands of these birds coming from my home state of Oklahoma, coming here to Guam exclusively for cockfighting. Unfortunately, cockfighting is legal in Guam, said Dr. Tom Poole, DVM, Senior Veterinarian for Animal Wellness. And we know he's a former territorial veterinarian. It's illegal for these birds to land in Guam from Oklahoma, Pacell said, and so on. So the article goes into how deep it is in Oklahoma. And then, of course, we know that the same thing was true on Guam because 11,000 birds, imported into Guam, and you can't even buy local eggs. And you know why that is, Jose? Why you can't buy any local eggs? Roosters don't lay eggs. Only the hens lay eggs. Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah, well, at least up until now, with given enough wokesters running around, I suppose they're probably going to dispute what I'm saying there, that the rooster, if the rooster really wanted to be a hen, the rooster could be a hen and then it could lay eggs, right? So these roosters kept coming in the mail. And as the article points out, there's no reason to be importing huge numbers of roosters. They're not good. They're no good for meat. They don't lay eggs, etc. So they're brought in for the illegal cockfighting that goes on here. Guam law allows for cockfighting, but we're so far behind. Guam law contemplates a cockpit licensing board, and we haven't had a cockpit licensing board for 10 years. So what's the point? I mean, we're just right on the edge of anarchy here because a certain small influential group of people wants the cockfighting to continue, and there's huge money involved in cockfighting. So it's not that hard to reach for the C word to justify it. Well, the Fed shouldn't ban cockfighting because it's part of our culture.
Oh, I didn't know there were so many Chamorros in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Oklahoma culture.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, something we share.
Yeah. So I've issued this caveat before. You've gotten away with it up until now, but this whole thing is going to turn to ashes on people that are doing it, raising them, because even just having one of those roosters is a federal crime. And sooner or later, Pacell is going to make enough noise, especially now that he's teamed up with Tom Poole, that they're going to come out looking for you guys, and you're going to find yourself down in front of the chief judge of the District Court of Guam if you don't get wise and knock it off.
And they didn't get the organized crime bosses through murder or even all the illegal stuff they did. They got them on tax evasion.
Yeah.
And it's very simple to do when you see income coming in that you can't account for.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, the whole cockfighting industry is strictly a cash business. Okay, next on the card here is Chris, the governor versus Chris. And let me take a short break here, and then we'll come back to the governor versus Chris.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup.
Including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. More to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal Opportunity Lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
What's the name of that song, Jose?
Something about Indiana.
Back Home Again in Indiana.
There you go.
I've done it so many times before. Can I do it one more time?
Sure thing.
Yeah, the name of that song is Back Home Again in Indiana. When I hear that song, it reminds me of some of the really exotic places I've been to in my long life, Jose. You know, I've been to India. I've been to Indonesia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you know what?
What?
I've even been to Indiana. You talk about exotic.
You've crossed state lines?
Yeah, across state lines to get from Wisconsin all the way across to Illinois to Indiana. Yeah, and you think Indiana is exotic? You know what the name of the capital is?
What is the name of the capital?
Indianapolis.
Don't say.
Wow. Yeah. I think they copied it from Minnesota, though. Yeah, because Minnesota is Minneapolis.
Not Soda-apolis?
Yeah. Okay, well, you know, during the break there, I got some updated information. It seems the Daily News doesn't have time to do editorials, but they were on the Amanda Shelton hearing like a duck on a June bug. So I'm just going to take a minute to kind of bring you up to date on that. And here's how it goes. Tourism Committee Chair Amanda Shelton canceled a 2 p.m. Friday oversight hearing on Guam Visitors Bureau issues, saying having only 4 individuals identified, and it hardly reflects the number of people who are key for a successful dialogue with the industry. Whoa. Talking about dissing your vice chair. And now, there's more to this, but I just want to stop and dwell on this point for a moment. Now, remember the coalition was Shelton, Barnett, Speaker Tetlahi, and the 6 Republicans.
No, Shelton. Paris.
I'm sorry, Paris. Okay, that's a big difference. Yeah. So maybe there's a little payback here. You want to join the coalition, and part of the deal for the coalition was more than likely the fact that Republicans would be vice chairs of all committees, and would have subpoena power. So Shelton's gone. Jesse calls an oversight hearing. Shelton beats her hasty retreat back to the island and comes in and cuts the legs right out from under her vice chair.
So it's not usual for the minority party to have vice chair positions.
I've never seen it before. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of obvious, Amanda Shelton.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And then we go on. Senator Jesse Lujan, the vice chair, who scheduled the oversight hearing while Shelton was off island, expressed disappointment with the cancellation, calling it a travesty for accountability. Tello Taitigui, also a committee member, accused Shelton of having a conflict of interest as chair of the tourism committee while also having a family member on the board. Wow.
That's interesting.
I'm concerned. I had always had an issue with Senator Shelton being the oversight chair, especially when she has a family member who sits on GVB. No, wait a minute. Is this a GVB board or the Gura board, Jose?
One and the same?
Yeah. Yeah, and is protecting him for one reason or another. I'm calling it out right now, Taitigui told reporters in the public hearing. Why is Senator Shelton stopping this meeting that's going to be actually transparent and allow the people to know what's going on at GVB, what they've been doing to correct the issues? She didn't name names, so I'll see if I can find out who that family member was between now and tomorrow, Jose. Not tomorrow, I mean on Monday, yeah. But going back again to the statement of Shelton, Shelton says, only 4 individuals, and I gave Jesse a pat on the back for, not turning this into a circus. And then Shelton comes along and says it hardly reflects the number of people who are key for successful dialogue with the industry. Well, you don't have dialogue at hearings. Senators listen, senators ask questions, people testify. Wow. Very, very interesting and a little bit alarming. It's a good thing we've got 6 Republicans in there. And then Tello calls out Shelton as having a conflict. And then we go on with the article in the Daily News. Lujan, Taitigui, Brown, and Fisher stayed in the public hearing room long after Shelton's cancellation notice was sent to the media. Shelton is back on island, her office said. While she was off island, Lujan was acting chair of the Tourism Committee. The committee will announce an oversight hearing soon when others are also available to participate, Shelton said in a cancellation notice shortly before canceling the hearing. GVB President Carl Gutierrez, GVB Vice President Jerry Paris, GVB Council Joe McDonald, along with Inalahan Mayor Anthony Chotgoloff and some senators were in the public hearing room before the announcement of the hearing cancellation. Shelton's office said there's no specific date set yet for when the oversight hearing would be held. Wow. Another case of ready, fire, aim, huh? Shelton has also distinguished herself before. I believe she's a quarterback, isn't she, Jose? I used to have that on the top of the card. Yeah, I think she is.
Well, most definitely.
Yeah, she is a quarterback. In other words, when it's time to vote on the floor, instead of voting, she passes.
I guess she passed again.
I guess. She caused everybody to pass this time around. Not very good, as you say, not very good optics for those who are watching on TV and see her come in and just shut the thing down.
Well, I'm glad that these, and she's not a freshman senator. I'm glad that she's making these statements that show that she's very amateur at what she's doing, in the sense that the hearing is an inquiry. It's a question and answer.
Yeah.
It's not a dialogue.
Exactly.
It's not a place for enough-a-mautic.
Exactly.
And this certainly was not a round table.
No, not even close. Very interesting. So I want to go on to, let's see, next item on the card here is the governor versus Chris. I want to go on to that next, but I see I've got Mike who wants to talk about cockfighting. So good timing, Mike. You got in between the couple items on the card, and you want to talk about something we've just been chatting about. So go for it.
So I wanted to bring up a couple facts versus narrative, right? So if you look at Wayne Parcells' quote that he's been saying for the last few years, and now Dr. Cole in the last year, they're quoting numbers of chickens imported to Guam for cockfighting. Is that correct?
He said the number of chickens.
Yeah, the number of chickens imported for cockfighting. For the use of
No, I
cockfighting.
don't think that's what he said. Let me go back to the article here.
Mm-hmm.
The investigation also reporting Oklahoma's biggest cockfighting operators accounted for 40% of the 11,500 birds shipped by cockfighters to the small U.S. territory in the Western Pacific.
Can I make a comment on that statement right there?
You certainly can.
The reason why Oklahoma has such high numbers is because they're the importers. They're not like, they're the guys who ship stuff to Guam. They're the only people who have the vets to make sure they're all free of disease and sign off. So the paperwork has to be signed off on a local vet, the Guam vet, and the Oklahoma state vet. So they're the only place that has state vets to sign off on the health of those birds before they're imported. So by saying Oklahoma is the capital, it's basically they are the shipping company. Oklahoma it should be said, Oklahoma is the shipping capital of game fowl. Will be proper.
Okay.
Okay, and go ahead, keep reading.
No, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to see the numbers. I wanted to get to the
11,000.
11,500.
11,500.
Okay, and what do they say are those 11,500 used for when they're shipped to Guam?
It says the investigation also reporting Oklahoma's biggest cockfighting operators accounted for 40% of the 11,500 birds shipped by cockfighters to the small U.S. territory of Guam.
Okay, it doesn't say what those chickens are used for when they get to Guam? Or does it say?
It doesn't. Were you listening?
Yeah, I was listening, but I'm trying to get like exactly what they're saying, because the point I'm trying to make is
Yeah,
they're
go ahead and
saying
make your
this
point.
number. They're saying this number, but they're not saying how many are boys and how many are girls. I've brought chickens in to breed them. When I bring them in, I bring 5 hens and 1 rooster. So I like to know when they say that number, are they saying, okay, out of that 1,100, 600 of them are males and, the rest are females. They're just giving you a big number, and it's almost assumed that they're just brought to Guam for cockfighting, but that's not the sole purpose. And, I'm sure if you've looked at the price of eggs, maybe before people weren't eating local eggs outside, or having their own chickens and having their own eggs. Maybe that wasn't really popular before, but with the price of eggs, a lot more people are asking for my eggs to eat, which I am providing to them. More family members are asking for it. And it's kind of the season where they lay a lot now, so I'm able to provide that to my family. But to say that, all those numbers are brought in just for the purpose of cockfighting, I think is misleading.
I think the number is 40% of that 11,500.
Yes.
And so if
used.
if 40% is used for cockfighting, I'm going to assume it's the rooster.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I like to see specific numbers.
Mike,
They both have
elsewhere in the same article, it talks about the same thing about the large number of roosters. And then there's a quote here from Tom Poole. I had to watch thousands of these birds coming from my home state, coming here to Guam exclusively for cockfighting. Now,
I don't think that's
Mike,
not a fair statement.
Mike, excuse me. You're apparently a chicken chicken rancher, right? You raise chickens
Yeah.
and you sell eggs.
And meat.
And meat, okay. So your point is that there are legitimate chicken raisers here. Everybody that has chickens is not a cockfighter, correct? Not a God's and arrow. Okay, well, that's a good point. And you want to make it clear that as a chicken rancher, you occasionally import chickens yourself.
Correct.
Okay. So is it possible that this article is correct? And is it possible that even though the article is correct, there are people like you that raise chickens?
It's possible. I like to see more defined numbers.
Okay. Now, if you did, how would that help you?
I think it would help the public to see that the exact numbers of what they think are being used for cockfighting.
And
I like to see how many are being used for cockfighting, wouldn't you?
Well, not really. That doesn't really strike my curiosity. I know the cockfighting's going on. I know it's illegal. And I've heard Tom Poole, the time he was a territorial veterinarian, tell us about, how many roosters were coming in that obviously were not brought in for meat or eggs. So I'm very curious about chicken ranching and people that are raising chickens for the eggs and meat. But to know how many are doing that and how many for, as far as I'm concerned, if it's one chicken that's imported for cockfighting, that's against the law.
Yeah, against the federal law, but local law says it's okay. I mean, how are they able to do it?
How are they able to do what?
Import chickens. I mean, people can still import chickens other than saying it's banned because of the bird flu. I mean, you think importing chickens is stopped if it's against the law?
Well, and there is the bone of contention because Chelsea Munia, the director of agriculture, is obviously complicit in bringing in all these birds, many of them obviously mailed from Oklahoma.
Yes, they typically come from Oklahoma, but because of the bird flu.
So I don't want to misunderstand, but I think this is kind of what I'm gathering from what you're saying. You raise chickens, you sell the meat, you sell the eggs, and you know that there's cockfighting going on, and you're pretty familiar with how it works in Oklahoma, but you somehow see it as derogatory to what you're doing because people are saying a lot of birds come to Guam for cockfighting.
Correct.
I don't understand. I don't understand how that would be a burr under your saddle, Mike.
Because when people see chickens in my yard, and they're well kept and they're healthy and they're in cages, the automatic assumption is that guy's a cockfighter. That guy's raising chickens to fight, And I think we need to kind of educate the public that not all chickens are used for fighting. That's my point. And I think by saying how many numbers or how many chickens are bringing to Guam are actually being used to fight or assumed being used to fight will kind of show me to say, hey, look, 40%, this is the other 60%.
Mike, I got to go because it's halftime,
Okay.
but I think that actually works against you. But I appreciate hearing your views, and congratulations. Keep raising the chickens and eggs. Good job.
Yeah.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Which Western country helped make the Chinese spy ship? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's and other questions being asked by members of Congress following an intelligence briefing on the balloon flight Thursday. As Fox News learns, the balloon had Western-made parts on it with words written in English.
We learned that the balloon is just one of a fleet operated by the Chinese military with the specific aim of spying on the U.S. in this case, many other countries in many other cases, and that the balloon shot down by a U.S. fighter jet on Saturday was laden with sophisticated equipment to gather intelligence and possibly to transmit that intelligence directly to Beijing.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. The Navy continues to try and recover parts of the balloon from the floor of the Atlantic. President Biden telling Telemundo the balloon flight over the U.S. was not a major breach. Former Vice President Mike Pence has been subpoenaed by the special counsel investigating former President Trump.
Sources confirmed to Fox that the subpoena from special counsel Jack Smith came after months of negotiations between former Vice President Pence's legal team and federal prosecutors. Smith was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland in November to look into the criminal investigation of classified documents kept by the former president at his Mar-a-Lago estate, as well as if he had any involvement with the January 6th riot. Both the DOJ and Pence's office have so far declined to comment. It remains unclear what exactly prosecutors will seek from the former vice president and if he will invoke claims of executive privilege.
Fox's Sean Lanchel. The sheriff in Harford County, Maryland, northeast of Baltimore, says the suspect, wanted for shooting at police officers, wounding one of them, is now pinned down where they can see him. This following a two-county manhunt. Wall Street lower again Thursday. The Dow down 249 points. NASDAQ off 121. The S&P 500 fell 36 points. America is listening to Fox News.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003, or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
The House Subcommittee on Weaponization of Government Agencies heard from a former FBI agent Thursday that the Bureau's focus and tactics changed after a small group of agents at the Bureau's headquarters pursued what she perceived to be political agendas. Committee member Florida Representative Matt Gaetz telling Fox's Hannity there are examples.
Before the 2016 campaign, an FBI lawyer changed evidence before a secret court. Before the 2018 campaign, the FBI was breathing life into the lying Steele dossier.
Democrats critical of the committee's existence, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries calling it part of the MAGA agenda. In southern Turkey, shrieks of joy from a mother as her 17-year-old son was pulled alive and relatively unharmed from the rubble of a building 5 days after it had collapsed in the devastating earthquake that has killed more than 20,000 people. Russian forces have struck critical infrastructure in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, and launched multiple strikes on energy infrastructure in Zaporizhia early Friday as Moscow steps up its attacks in Ukraine's south and east. In Northern California, a stolen statue has been recovered.
It was a pleasant press conference in Monterey, California, where the county sheriff, Tina Nieto, made this announcement.
It's a happy day for us. It's a happy day for the people of your community, Monterey, and the reason it's such a happy day is that we have found Dennis the Menace.
What she means is that police recovered a 3-foot-tall statue of the lovable character that had been stolen out of a local park. The statue was recovered in Roberts Lake after police got a tip. This particular statue has been a menace, as the original was stolen back in 2006 and was never found. This statue was taken in August of last year when someone actually cut through its foot to steal it. John Saucier, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so here we are at the end of another big halftime show. So go ahead, Jose, do your usual instruction.
You too can get a I'm a Tailgater t-shirt by pointing your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. When you go to that site, click on the picture of the t-shirt and the beard. It'll bring you to the purveyor. Order your t-shirt. When it arrives, put that shirt on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And you, too, can become a part of the I'm a Tailgater Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, man, what a treat. And it doesn't cost anything, right?
No, it doesn't. And it'll provide many benefits.
Absolutely. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about here is the governor versus Chris. But let's have a game of chicken first, Jose.
Sure thing. I know you wanted to talk about, the caller made some really good points. Wasn't really sure what the issue was, but the points were really good, except for I was curious, and I know a lot of the other tailgaters were curious about why some people didn't know the difference between someone raising chickens for fighting or raising chickens for eggs and meat. I got to admit, I had a family member when we were living in Georgia come out from Guam and said, "Hey, Jose, we're going to the mountains here in Georgia. I need to buy some chickens." And he goes, "I need you to look out for the land where all you see are teepees everywhere." I said, "Teepees?" He was pointing to the individual A-frame huts that each rooster was housed in, separate from each other, and they were also tethered to these teepees. And so he taught me the big difference between a ranching farm for chickens for meat and eggs as opposed to one that raises chickens for cockfighting, is that they house the cockfighters individually. They're not together usually. And the ones for ranching are usually in community coops or free range, and they're mostly together. And you can tell, and a lot of people here on Guam know the difference because they've seen these type of ranches. Even the coops are individually set together, so there's only one per room or one rooster per cavity. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. 40 years ago, you hardly ever saw a chicken out running around in the boonies.
They're everywhere.
Now they're everywhere.
Because they're all in retirement.
Okay.
And you would not dare eat a fighting chicken in your kadu anymore, or your kanapika, They're just rot full of different kind of steroids and vitamins that it might not be too healthy.
Yeah.
So just check before you catch that next wild chicken.
Yeah. So, you know, I applaud the caller, Mike. I'm glad to hear that he's raising chickens and selling eggs and everything like that. And I would have been happy if he had just called in and said, you know, I don't do anything with cockfighting. Here's what I use chickens for. That would have been really interesting. But I just don't understand how he thinks that people like Tom Poole and Wayne Pacell, who he thinks are not being factual and are putting cockfighters in cockfighting in a bad light, have any impact on him.
I do have to look for an article that did mention, who did you say at the Department of Agriculture?
Chelsea, yeah.
That she's going to stop signing off on some of these certain breeds that are coming in because it was becoming to be an issue with her also. If I recall, that was the article. And it must have been about the last month or two.
Maybe the new veterinarian.
Or the new veterinarian, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The new territorial veterinarian. Yeah. Yeah. So as far, you know, as far as Tall Tales is concerned, yeah, it's great. It's people are raising chickens for meat and eggs. It's bad that people are raising or importing chickens for cockfighting because it's against the law, and the penalties. Even for possessing a bird are really serious. The tail end of that article says that
it's a heavy fine.
Yeah, it's a fine. Yeah, there's a fine. You could forfeit your proceeding against your property, including your land, your pickup. I mean, it's really heavy-duty stuff. It's just not something to play around with, even if you think it's. And I recognize the article. You know, we've had cockfighting here going all the way back to the Spanish times. And, you know, territories and states ought to have, under the idea of federalism, ought to be able to enact their own criminal laws. And why is the federal government sticking its nose in our business? I can understand that. But they have. And so I think it's really important that people understand that the penalties for getting involved in cockfighting can be really severe. Okay, let's go on with the governor versus Chris. And this is an article that ran in the Daily News. And the governor, it's kind of cast as an editorial, but you're wondering what's he trying to say here. You got to wait to the end for the punchline.
This is what's called passive aggressive.
So the headline is, Governor, change is hard to achieve, but it can also be hard to accept. For years, government leaders have promised to build public sector budgets that spend less than they collect in revenue, eliminate our deficit, prioritize teachers, nurses, and law enforcement personnel, and place real cash in our rainy day fund. Despite years of good intentions, promises made were not promises kept. Over time, these broken promises became the norm, and we failed to invest in the tools and capacity building that actually make government work, as our predecessors failed to invest in quality personnel or the basic resources they needed to do the job. The government became less effective, and assigning blame became more popular than solving problems. Until now. For the first time in a generation, the government of Guam is deficit-free without borrowing a penny. About 70% of small business owners only pay 3% or lower in business privilege tax since I became the governor, and the days of vendors waiting hopelessly for payment are over. Additionally, based on the first 3 months of the new fiscal year alone, revenues collected exceeded budgeted amounts by 29 million. These numbers come from strong performance of the general fund and the resurgence of the special funds like the Tourism Attraction Fund, a fund that is only likely to gain strength as vaccine and travel requirements relax globally over the next few months. Despite these clear facts, some have argued that it is not prudent to proceed with public sector pay adjustments for employees who have not seen a meaningful raise in nearly a decade. Some have even said these pay adjustments were selfish. I've got to correct this here. No, some have not said that these pay adjustments were selfish. It wasn't some. It was Chris Duenas. Yeah, Senator Chris Duenas. Now, if we were back in the Black Lives Matter era, I'd say his name, Chris Duenas. For reasons passing understanding, these same voices opposed educator pay raises last year while still claiming that teachers and their students were a priority. Perhaps even more disconcerting is that these same opponents repeatedly voted to protect the 2014 Hay Plan proposed by my Republican predecessor. That plan included a $20,000 pay raise for senators, thousands in retroactive pay for politicians, and a little more than pennies per hour for many merit employees like educators. Now, that $20,000 pay raise for senators didn't go through as part of the pay plan adoption. That took the Juan Pat 10 Ray Tenorio connection to enact. And then the governor goes on to say, that is something our plan does not do. Our plan prioritizes the rank and file. The 2014 proposal was different in other ways, too. This proposal, offered by a Republican governor, came at a time when the island's deficit was $59.6 million and our long-term debt increased by $343 million. But the same voices calling for prudence and admonishing selfishness stayed quiet under startlingly different circumstances. Why? Our deficit was exploding then. It's gone now. We borrowed for tax refunds then. We do not now. Up to $55 million in federal EITC payments went unreimbursed for decades. They are fully recovered now. General fund annual impact was eliminated. Our rainy day fund was empty then. It's fully funded now. Cash reserves are climbing as we speak. You waited months for your refunds then. You have them now in as little as 2 weeks. When much has changed since 2014, perhaps what matters most to some is not how we are governed, by what party we are governed by. But that kind of politics won't repair schools or keep good teachers in our classrooms. At a recent legislative roundtable regarding issues at George Washington High, education officials were clear. Guam DOE can't recruit or retain the plumbers, electricians, or skilled labor it needs to maintain our schools because the government wage scale is no longer competitive. Not surprisingly, these same positions, those desperately needed to help maintain our schools, are governed by the general pay plan. I think we all care about DOE and the students it's responsible for, but history has shown that the politics of who proposes an idea is more important than the merit of the idea itself. Funding the general pay plan is vital to giving DOE the skilled plumbers, electricians, maintenance workers it needs to keep our schools safe. We should listen. Now, I've got another Joe on the line here, but before I go to another Joe, I want to get my 2 cents worth in, which is effectively Chris Duenas' 2 cents worth. let's say I agree with everything that the governor says here. I'm still with Chris and say that if you're going to do this, you do it as part of the annual budget. You don't use the salary mousetrap. You don't come out and throw it out and then play chicken with the legislature, because if the legislature doesn't appropriate the money, everybody's angry at them, but say, wow, how wonderful the governor is.
And I think that's the crutch of it right there. You know, she wants to say, stop talking politics, then stop doing political moves like this.
Exactly, because that's exactly what it was. And the teachers was a classic example. She used the ARP money instead of using it to fix the schools. She knew that it would run out on September 30. She knew that the new budget starts on October 1. So, you know, she trapped the legislature into doing that appropriation. So that's why, if I could read his mind, that's why Chris said, if you're going to do this, you got to do it in the annual budget appropriation. Then you can make all these arguments that you're making now that don't fall on deaf ears here on Tall Tales, but don't give them very much weight, because you're trying to use that salary mousetrap against the legislature again. Okay, let's see what, I guess another Joe probably wants to talk about compact impact if we're talking debt, right? Tell me more, another Joe.
Goodbye. I'm thinking you got complications with my phone here. Okay. So everyone wants to talk about deficit and, we're doing so good, we're not overspending, but no one wants to talk about the territorial debt. I think we had somewhere around $2 billion territorial debt. I haven't heard very much about it since the time of Doris Flores Brooks, when she was public auditor, and then she decided to run for Congress.
Right.
So I think if everyone wants to be real responsible and transparent, we need to take a serious look at the territorial debt and see how much of that debt we can pay down, because it doesn't seem that our younger generations, our grandchildren are going to be able to afford $500,000 homes, right? Maybe Luli Algaro will be able to afford $500,000 homes, but she'll probably be the only one left in Guam. But everyone else will be, struggling to find a way to afford being able to live on their so-called homeland, Chamorro homeland. So I think they need to take a serious look at the territory they talk about. And thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good point, another Joe. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay, I got Senator Chris Duenas on the line. Should we go to Wrigley Field first, Jose? Yeah, let's, Chris, we're going to go to Wrigley Field. We'll catch you out there in the center field bleachers.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Listen to this important message. The first leg of the next transport of heavy haul components has been rescheduled for Sunday, February 12th at 2:45 p.m. Northbound traffic on Route 1 will be delayed. Go to poweronthemove.org. From Dusan Ukudu Power and Dusan Enerbility.
So here we are in Wrigley Field, Chicago. Jose, I may have misunderstood, but are you telling me that those great big machines that are moving the parts from the port are going to go to Wrigley Field?
The big green machines, but not the big red machine, yes, but not to the big green wall. Well, that's in Boston.
That's the Red Sox.
That's the Red Sox.
Yeah, the Green Monster, yeah.
But they're moving on Sunday instead of Saturday as originally scheduled.
All right. Okay, so here we are in Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I look around out here in the center field bleachers, and who do I see? None other but Senator Chris Dueñas. So, Chris, is it true that change is hard to achieve, but it's also hard to accept?
Happy day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Honorable Senator, my favorite talk show host. Yeah, and here's why I'll actually agree with that point, but for a much different reason. First of all, you read my mind perfectly well. It's kind of intriguing that I don't think anybody, maybe they don't want to, but I don't think anybody's gone and looked at what the two bills actually do. The one bill, you've exactly laid it out. My main emphasis is do this as part of the budgeting process so that you can evaluate and figure out what the priorities are in line with what you're talking about. The second is, I think the governor went pretty low on this one to say that plumbers and electricians are the reasons why we have all of these problems in the schools. It is because there has never been an adequate budget. And as far as I'm concerned, now that we're down to 25 employees in maintenance, I think we've figured out a magic bullet here. And that is to go to a contract and privatize these operations once and for all and get out of the business of maintenance and stay in the business of teaching and learning, which is something that Bob Klitzkie I know loves.
Indeed.
So here's my takeaway. And first of all, I'm not going to shy away from this, Your Honor. She's absolutely right. Go ahead and pin that on me, that I made a mistake, and I've apologized on this radio station for making that mistake, or including and going through and giving ourselves a pay raise. I apologize for it, but I want to thank the governor for writing that, because actually the reason for why I'm fighting so hard for this now is I learned such a lesson during that time, which is you never prioritize your salary, your pay, over the overall operations of the government of Guam. Thank you for reminding me, Governor, because you're exactly right. That's probably why I've learned that lesson. And, you know, they say, a friend of mine actually who studied this says even a jackass doesn't bump himself on the same rock twice. There's a story behind that. It's real quick that I can tell it, that in the ancient days when jackasses, donkeys would take goods and others traversing through rocky areas in different districts, in different regions of the world, their owners would notice that when they went through a bumpy trail and their jackass bumped himself on a rock, the next time they went to the same trail, that jackass had a good memory, and he didn't hit the rock again. So thanks, Gov, for pointing that out. But the whole point that was missed as well on this issue is that here we go once again prioritizing with all of the situations we have with the dilapidated schools in absolute poor and actually unfit conditions, with a hospital that hasn't started any of the major projects for the $45 to $50 million that needs to be done, with officers at bare minimum levels manning our streets and providing safety for our people, with the Department of Corrections right now that's at absolute severe, dangerous levels. The list goes on and on and on. And this is the first thing we're going to do. She should have pointed out that Dr. Wampat was so happy that we were going to give back the $30 million, and so was Frank Cooper-Nurse, and they actually said, thank you, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deal with the $90 million that now has ballooned to $140 million, deferred maintenance just in the Department of Education. Your Honor, there's only $70 million left that Judy Wampat has committed every penny of to reprogram just to repairs, maintenance, and executing the missions of coming up to standard with regard to public health requirements. That means even if we put the $30 million back, Your Honor, we're still $40 million short of the deferred maintenance. None of this makes any sense. But if, Your Honor, you know this because this was one of your favorite months of legislative session was August. The entire month is dedicated for the budget. This is when you have these arguments because you're exactly right. It's easy to spring the political mousetrap in a time when you don't have to take consideration in the totality of the obligations of the government of Guam to provide. I know I'm going to learn to have to recite it, but I know you'll recite it later in terms of the Bob Klitzkie rule of public service, operating on a break-even basis, service. I'm not going to try because I'll murder it.
Let me help you here, Chris. An effective, efficient government that provides basic services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis.
And there it is. And see, the time that you can make that fundamental statement when you're going line by line in the budget, when you're adopting revenues, when you're adopting expenditures, when you're doing what you need to do, and every time you get to education, public safety, the hospital, public health, all the way down the lines when you identify what the priorities are, if you plug that statement in every time, I guarantee you, even a well-deserved pay raise will be moderated on top of and in terms of what is truly needed for our community, why people have left Guam in droves, because not only is the economic situation tough for them, but they have no promise to raise their children in this community. They have no promise of a home because home prices are out of reach. They have no promise of knowing that their kids come home from a public school with a great education, that they're going to have an opportunity for tomorrow. And they have no promise of safety in their community because they're spending more time as soon as they get home making sure that their generator, their motorcycle, their bicycle, or whatever else they had around their yard wasn't stolen that day, that they either have to replace or just give up and leave. When we fix all these problems and when Guam is operating exactly the way you were discussing, then let's go ahead and discuss exuberance. And to say that we were against the teacher pay raise, because you know I, as well as you, value teachers. We were not against the teacher pay raise. That was a very important opportunity. We were against stealing money from a vital source, a once-in-a-lifetime, as Ms. Wampat said, opportunity. And that once-in-a-lifetime was to go in there and raid that treasury so that you could be the most popular individual going into the gubernatorial election mere months away.
Yeah, well, she said in her op-ed, that apparently some people think it's more that who makes the decisions is more important than what decisions are made, Chris.
Well, I think I'm not gonna take that bait. I'm gonna go back to her title, Change. Governor Change is doing what's right operationally and fixing the stark deficiencies within our government operations, and then moving towards the very, very easy cream of the crop to make all people happy with a 22% pay raise and love you. Man, I'm going to try to cue you up, Jose. What's the button? Love you for... Let's just be honest with ourselves. I mean, that's such an easy thing to do. And especially at a time where I'm going to tell you right now, outside of the key major operational, functions of this government, the vital employees that we've given absolute deserved raises to, I don't know of many people who are just running from the government to go apply at Payless, Cost You Less, FHP, Insert Business here, Benson, Guam, Home Depot. I don't know how many people are actually just running away from the government saying, I can't stand you anymore. You don't pay me enough. I'm going to go work over there.
I think it's the other way around, Chris.
Can I interject something, Senator, really? An observation I made that I recounted on that roundtable you had with DOE. I noticed a lack of morale or a low morale going on in that room, talking about the state of DOE and the schools and everything. I know that there's been plenty of studies and plenty of people and maybe a lot of anecdotal evidence of people remaining at jobs even though they're getting paid a lower rate, but the job is good, the management is good, the buildings are good, and they're happy to be at work. And it's not because they got a pay raise. You can give people lots of money to pay, but if they don't like where they're working at because nothing is functioning, nothing is clean, and bad management, they're going to leave. And that's what it is, that we're not fixing the infrastructure. We're thinking we're just going to throw money at the employees and they're going to be remaining forever.
Everybody wants to play for the Yankees. Nobody wants to play for the Cubs.
Absolutely. Well, and to think, I think a lot of them finally got it off their chest, too. For that athletic director, I mean, talk about embarrassing. For the last 3.5 years now, that athletic director says, if it wasn't for Father Dwayne down the road being so wonderful to us, allowing us to use their gym to practice, or UOG allowing us to use their gym to practice and have games, but for that, we would not have volleyball or basketball. I mean, how fundamentally crazy is that? I mean, we got kids right now that are getting scholarships to colleges in the United States under rugby scholarships. Or at least it would enhance their application process if they can at least play and prove that they were an outstanding athlete. Besides the fact that we all know keeping these kids involved in sports keeps them off the streets, keeps them away from drugs, keeps them responsible for what they're doing. I mean, if we're not ashamed, I don't know what we are. And so that's where I'm saying. I mean, it's just absolutely silly. I wish you would have wrote me a letter and say, Chris, I'm asking the committee to immediately expedite that bill to replace the $30 million to education, because you're exactly right. It's part of my plan. And we'll talk about this in the budget process going forward. Maybe we can just do that. Be reasonable. But to go straight to the pitting and the class warfare straight away again, and use a whataboutism of the past, which has to be dissected in its own particular way, because, Governor, I have to remind you, please show me any administration that in 3.5 years had $5 billion fall in its lap. Please show me that statistic, because that's the one I want to see.
Good point, Chris.
So, I mean, I'm not going to be this bold, but, I mean, I've heard it said that Mickey Mouse could have prepared the budget for the last 3 years. But I'm going to say that, to be our commander-in-chief, basically, and not be realistic about Rome is burning and turn around and drive an insult about whataboutism and basically nanny boo-boo, you did this, which doesn't exist today. As a matter of fact, this governor, when she walked in, gave massive raises on top of the salaries that were set for all unclassified offices within her office and throughout this government. Directors, you've noted board meetings for director and general managers' pay that have gone up extremely exponentially. I mean, pay is just flowing throughout the government of Guam right now. And the bottom line is that to try to go back to 2014, I think is an insult to injury, if I could put it that way.
Very interesting. Talking about insults here, Chris. In one paragraph in her op-ed, she said, some have even said that these pay adjustments were selfish. And I had to correct the text here, because it wasn't some that said it was selfish. It was Chris Duenas that said it was selfish.
Well, I can't think of any other term, Your Honor, when it comes down to the facing the reality. I mean, it's, I know we all try to, and I've been noted for this. I try to be diplomatic and nice wherever I can. But at some point, if you don't use the term that fits the issue, when you've got this kind of perennial issues and longstanding issues, and you even have the acting superintendent of education say the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to which $30 million was pilfered, I don't know how else to say it. It is selfish. It's selfish, and it's self-serving.
Well, I can't say that I disagree with you on that, Chris. You pretty well, I think, rebutted everything that the governor put in her letter, that effective, efficient government depends on planning.
Exactly.
You can't just make it up as you go along. And you can't use your position to trap somebody else into doing something that everyone who looks at it knows is fiscally irresponsible. That's not how you keep on the break-even basis.
And it's not even how you keep on putting out your product, because Byrne, of course, carrying the torch, that's his job, but puts out all the platitudes of how it's sustainable with Section 30 money for military spending, everything else going forward, says nothing about how tourism is going to track to catch up for when this federal funding stops. And you know as well as I do, Your Honor, once you put this 22% in place, every single position that gets funded at that rate is funded that way going forward. And not only going forward, most of those employees will have many, many years that they'll still be in those positions, getting increments. This number is not a one-shot deal. It's not $16 million for the balance of this fiscal year and $22 million next year. This is going to balloon to $30, $40, $50 million in subsequent fiscal years.
Because 22% this year is cumulative. So next year it'll be 22% plus the salary increments that grow to the employees, and on every year that an employee is eligible for the increment. So it's going to climb pretty fast.
Well, not only that, Your Honor, you know how this budgeting process works, and this is why I talk about budgeting. There's always this warm bodies versus budgeted positions. I guarantee you that this calculation was done on warm bodies, and I guarantee you there's probably another 20% of budgeted positions that haven't been filled right now. That in itself could be an additional $10 million if they recruit and put those people in, because they're not going to bring that employee in now if they're a clerk typist 2 at $32,000. You're going to have to put 22% on top of that, and that individual is now employed at that rate with everything going forward. You can't just wave a magic wand and say that. That's why I'm saying, where's your? It's almost anecdotal for the director to just go out and say that. Where's the SES meeting? Where is the forecast? Where is how this is sustainable against all the other obligations we have? And that's why I guess I'm just so flustered by it, because it's asinine as far as I'm concerned. I can't use any other language.
Well, I think you did a pretty good job of laying it out for us this afternoon, Chris. I'm really glad you called in. My hope is that all of our tailgaters here will pick up on the lesson that you provided for us and kind of spread it around. And I want to urge you to keep up the good work, Chris.
Oh, I won't stop this one. I mean, I have a list of questions for when that bill gets heard, and I also have a list of questions for the chairman if he doesn't hear my bill right alongside it, because I will pronounce that until this whole process is over. This is not as simple of a swoosh as we're talking about here. It's heavy. It implicates a lot of situations. And you're right, Governor. Doing something different is hard. Finally funding maintenance and operations for our government of Guam and not having falling down buildings and dilapidated structures for our well-paid government employees to go to is change. It's hard, Governor, but we can do it.
That's a good wrap-up, Chris. Very good. Let's give him a round of applause, Jose. Yeah. Chris was really on his game today, wasn't he? Yeah, good shot. I'd like to see this one played out live.
Maybe set a transcript.
Yeah.
To be printed.
And a caller, I guess he changed his mind?
I think so. I didn't even hear a hello.
Okay. Well, caller, this would be a good time. If you want to get on Tall Tales, this would be a good time right now before I pick up the next item on the card. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs here for our last break today.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003, or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
For your safety, listen to the following message. Transport of heavy haul components has been rescheduled for Sunday, February 12th, departing the port at 2:45 p.m., heading northbound on Route 1. Traffic will be delayed. Go to poweronthemove.org for information, alternate routes, and live updates.
Next item on the card is legislature versus Lacia Casil, although it probably ought to be legislature versus legislature. This is a story that ran in the Daily News. Headline, Legislature seeks legal review of Hagåtña Master Plan's passage. The Guam legislature is asking its council for an opinion on the Master Development Plan for Hagåtña, which is the Hagåtña Restoration and Development Authority this week announced lapsed into law without legislative action. Senator Brown, vice chair of the legislature's Committee on Land, said lawmakers want to verify the timelines for the plan's automatic adoption have been met. Lawmakers don't necessarily agree they have. I got to go do another vocabulary lesson here. Verify. Verify. The word verity comes from the same root word as verify. To verify something means you want to find out if it's true. Not if it's accurate, but if it's true. Verify.
So the word ought to be affirm? Confirm?
Vice Chair said lawmakers want to determine. Yeah. Verify, it just doesn't fit in there because verify, the word verify means find out if something is true. Yeah, I know you said that that there were 11,000 chickens that came into the island from Oklahoma, but I want to verify that number. I want to find out if it's true, right? However, let's say you told me that the 30th of the month is a Sunday. You don't want to verify that. You want to determine if it's correct. So when people are, don't use put it this way, the more careful you are with the language, the more easily it is to understand you. So Senator Brown, and this isn't a quote, this is something the reporter threw in there. Lawmakers don't necessarily agree they have. Senators rejected the controversial master plan last April by an 8-6 vote. However, a revised draft was reintroduced by the Office of the Governor October 21. A public hearing was held on November 14, and senators failed to take further action on the matter. I think it's better, senators decided not to take further action on the matter. According to the Redevelopment Authority, the plan became law on December 8. Brown, who wasn't on the committee responsible for the plan last term, said she couldn't address the timeline, but its passage without final legislative review was an issue. I know that there were concerns that were raised, obviously during the public hearing, with regard to the master plan. And I didn't gauge there was an overwhelming number of votes that would have been put in place to authorize that to move forward. The center was part of the legislature that created the Redevelopment Authority in 1997 and said that much has changed in the years since the authority's powers were laid out. The agency's ability to condemn land in the island's capital was a particular discomfort to some lawmakers, she said. Additionally, powers held by the Redevelopment Authority and the master plan haven't yet been reviewed by the current legislature. Whether landowners in the area have been adequately informed of the changes was still an outstanding issue. If indeed it did lapse, which we're not saying it has because we're still waiting for legal review, then we'll probably readdress it, Brown said. She said the plan may be rolled back until certain concerns may be fixed. Republican Minority Whip Telo Taitigui said she was unaware the plans could lapse into law, figures, and planned to seek a review from the Office of the Attorney General. Guam law is a specific provision for how plans for the Hagåtña restoration will be adopted. It gives the legislature 45 calendar days and 2 legislative days after they receive the plan to adopt, reject, or amend it. Now, this sounds like they're copying the same scheme as employed by the administrative adjudication law, which is used to adopt rules and regulations, not substantive law. According to Brown, the legal disagreement is over how legislative days has been interpreted. She said she couldn't understand why the now lapsed law went unaddressed last term, as she didn't have oversight of it. Bill 347, which laid out the plan, was never placed on the agenda for the 36th legislature's final session in December. Lawmakers at the time were also rushing to address as many as 32 bills, many of which were controversial. Senator Amanda Shelton was the acting chair of the Committee on Revitalization on Rules when the bill was addressed in November and December. Her office confirmed Thursday. The senator was off island and not available for comment.
She's back now.
Yeah, she's back now. Shelton was filling in for Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes, the chair, who was absent, Rules Chair, who was absent through much of the last term due to various family health issues. The Vice Speaker's husband recently died. May he rest in peace. No committee report for Bill 347 was prepared. Redevelopment Authority Executive Director Lascia Casil initially agreed to an interview Thursday, but didn't respond to follow-up calls or WhatsApp message as of press time. Okay, now if you go back to the statute, you go to 21 GCA, Chapter 79, Restoration of Hagåtña, you'll find Section 79.304. And it says, the authority shall submit the plan to the governor who, if he approves the same, shall transmit the plan to the legislature in the form of a bill for adoption, amendment, modification, or rejection by the legislature. Such plan shall not be effective until either approved by statute or it shall have complied with the provisions of this law and 45 calendar days have elapsed from the date of receipt by the legislature of its transmittal, and 2 legislative days have elapsed after the lapse of the 45 calendar days. The legislative secretary may request that the authority submit all or part of the record of any public hearings on the plan. The legislature may approve, disapprove, or amend said plan so transmitted within the combined period of 45 calendar days and 2 legislative days. Now, in an earlier section, we find a subsection M, and there's a list of the powers that the authority has. M, exercise the power of eminent domain in a manner now or which may hereafter provided by law for the exercise of such power by the government, except the complaint in eminent domain shall be brought in the name of and on behalf of the authority as plaintiff, and title of the property shall vest in the authority. That is a hell of a lot of power. So it means this revitalization restoration committee can go out and let's say that you own Blackacre downtown, right? And they think, Blackacre would be a really nice place for a parking lot. And that commission, without saying hello, goodbye, or kiss my ass to anybody else, enacts a resolution, according to this, condemns that land. That's an awful lot of power for a border commission to possess. And again, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. Even GURA, which gets into the condemnation business, GURA had that power, but it's in the housing business. Now, going back to this scheme, the legislature enacts laws in only one way. It passes a properly introduced bill, properly framed bill, in a session with a majority of a quorum present voting for the bill. And then the bill is sent to the governor, who either signs or vetoes, and the legislature can override. That's the only way that the legislature can pass a law. There's no default provision or anything else. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that we do have the administrative adjudication law, so the legislature has a role in that, but it's the executive that enacts the rules and regulations. And rules and regulations serve to interpret statutes, fill gaps in statutory lacunae, and if the legislature delegates legislative power, they can use legislative power as governed by certain standards. But I don't think that the legislature can delegate the power of eminent domain through this rulemaking, because that's all you wind up with here is rules. And I don't think that a heavy-duty power like the power of eminent domain can be delegated that way. So I think the legislature, the minority ought to hire a lawyer to start with. Because if you don't have a lawyer, you're going into a gunfight with a knife. But they ought to hire a lawyer and make sure that and check out these challenges, because I think even if the time has run properly, I think an awful lot of the powers given to that authority really can't be handled in the manner that they have. Okay, so it's getting pretty close to the end of another week, right, Jose?
It is indeed.
Crying time again, right? But I think I've got enough time here to get into Biden's blunders one more time before the week is over. And here's Biden's blunders. This one's called Who's in Charge? President Biden isn't always so sure. He has on multiple occasions dubbed his number 2, Kamala Harris, the commander-in-chief. It started last year as Biden delivered a White House speech on COVID-19 vaccines. Quote, "When President Harris and I took a virtual tour of the vaccination center in Arizona not long ago," President Harris, he stated, "one of the nurses on that tour injecting people, giving vaccinations, said that each shot was like administering a dose of hope. He didn't seem to notice he'd given his job away. A flub he went on to repeat again and again." Well, as bad as he is, yeah, just the old saying, it could have been worse. Well, I don't think so. So that's it for another week out there, tailgaters. We'll see you next week. And let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Was
Is the FBI used as a political weapon? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's the first question being pursued by a House subcommittee on the possible weaponization of government agencies.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan says dozens of FBI whistleblowers have come forward.
Coming to us, talking about what's going on, the political nature at the Justice Department.
The subcommittee's first public hearing featured testimony from former special agents. Nicole Parker telling lawmakers.
Distancing myself from egregious mistakes, immoral behavior, politically charged actions taken by a small but destructive few FBI employees became exhausting.
Top committee Democrat Stacey Plaskett suspects the majority of investigations Republicans want to look into
and potentially muck up, involve criminal investigations into former President Donald Trump.
Republicans say they want answers about political bias.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the Capitol. Former Vice President Mike Pence has been subpoenaed by the special counsel investigating documents with classified markings found at former President Trump's home and Mr. Trump's actions following the 2020 election. Some surprises from the parts of that Chinese spy balloon being plucked from the Atlantic offshore from South Carolina after its cross-country flight last week. Some of those parts were made in the West. There was printing in English on some of them. To Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton, this deepens the embarrassment to the U.S.
I think they were shocked in Beijing. I mean, Joe Biden was paralyzed by a balloon all week long. Meanwhile, the Chinese communists were laughing at America.
Members of Congress were given an intelligence briefing on the balloon yesterday. President Biden says it wasn't a major breach. Hazmat teams have responded to a train derailment near downtown Los Angeles. So far, the fire department says nothing hazardous spilled. Southern Turkey, a 17-year-old boy has been rescued from the earthquake rubble 5 days after the murderous earthquake now blamed for 20,000 deaths. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, it's Will Kane, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Join me as I share my thoughts on a wide range of topics, from sports and pop culture to politics and business. With the help of newsmakers and personalities, I will provide you my free, unfiltered, uncancelable opinion on the hottest topics in America.
The Will Kane Podcast. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. America is listening to Fox News.
President Biden will welcome many of the nation's governors to the White House today.
A statement from the White House says President Biden will be hearing from the National Governors Association winter meeting about the impact of the administration's economic agenda